Today I'm going to show you how to make a collectible system for your game. So imagine like Slenderman where you have to collect the papers, or probably Playtime where you have to collect toys. So to start off, we are going to actually make the collectibles. For this simple example, I'm just going to use 3 art canvases with writing on them as pieces of paper, but you can use whatever you like. And here, a classic collectible is the horror game lore collectible, so we'll make 3 of these. Next, we are going to get 3 trigger volumes, and we are going to encase each piece of paper in a trigger volume. Now you need 3 clamps, 1 for each one. Next, we're going to connect all 3 of these items together. We're going to go in our maker pen and hit connect. Then you want to connect the trigger volume, make sure that the outline is on the trigger volume. Connect that to the black part on the clamp, and then you want to connect the art canvas, so make sure the outline is on the art canvas. You want to connect that to the gold pin on top of the clamp, and you want to do that for all of your collectibles. So now when I move the trigger volume, the canvas and the clamp come with it. Alright, let's move over a little bit to start working on the circuits. So the first thing you want to do is detach all 3 of these boards from their trigger volume. For this, you hit configure on the trigger volume board, hit circuit settings, go down to detach object, and move them to your circuit space. I'm actually going to stack them with the first one on top, second one, third one. So each trigger volume board that you have needs to get its own bool variable with its own name. We're just going to call ours collected 1 for the first, collected 2, and collected 3. You also want to make sure that all of them are synced. All right, and you can tell they've all been renamed and they're all synced. And then what you want to do is connect the player entered to the collected variable beside the board. Then you're going to want to change all of these to true. So what do we want to happen when these items are collected? Well, we want their variables to turn to true when they get touched. So we already have that part taken care of. But what we also want to happen is we need the collectible to then be transported somewhere way out of the map where nobody is going to mess with it until the game resets. So for that, we are going to need an if chip for every collectible you have. So we have 3. You're going to need a set position chip for each one. So that's 3 set position chips. And I'm just going to use 1 vector create for the position we're going to teleport them to. It's a little weird to teleport them all to the exact same spot, but that's just what we're doing for simplicity. So now what you want to do is hook up the bool output for each one to their if chip. So if this is true, meaning it has been collected, then we want it to set position out of the map. So we do the same thing here. The then goes to set position. The target for each of these set position chips is going to be the trigger volume itself. So we're going to hit target and hook it up to the trigger volume board on all of them. And then for the position, we're going to hook all of the positions up to this vector create up here. And I'm going to change the Y to be -20 because I'm fairly certain that -20 is going to be way below the map. You may have to experiment changing all these numbers to get a position that is outside of your map. So we want this system to be constantly checking whether or not the collectible has been collected. So for that, we need an event receiver, and we're going to configure it to be a 30 Hertz update. Next up, we need a if local player is room authority, and we're going to hook it right up to the 30 Hertz receiver. And you want to hook up the I'm authority to the first if, and then you want to hook up the else from that if to the input of the second if, and then do the same thing for the third one, hook it from the else to the if. So the way I have it hooked up here is wrong intentionally to kind of show you why we are doing the next step. So let's imagine that collectible 2 was collected. It's now been turned true, which is then going to activate this if chip, which will activate the then output, and it would just constantly set the position of collectible number 2. Then after 2 is collected, let's say somebody comes along and collects number 3. Well, even if it is true, it's always stopping right here. It's never going to reach number 3. So to fix this, each collectible is going to need a second bool variable with a different name. We're going to name all 3 of ours turn off 1, turn off 2, and turn off 3. Also make sure that they are synced. Make sure all 3 of these are set to false. Now we're going to unhook all 3 of these initial bool variables and add in 3 AND chips underneath them. So now for each one of these bool variables, we are going to connect the bool output to the top and input for its row. And we're also going to connect the bool output that was connected here to the other input on the AND chip. So at the end, that bool variable and that bool variable will both be hooked up to the inputs on this AND chip. And the same with that row and that row. Then of course we hook the AND output up to the input on the if chip. So next we're going to move to a slightly different area, but still related. We're going to get an event receiver and configure it to room reset. Now we want to come over to the turn off bools and select all three of them. And then we want to clone all of them and bring them over to the event receiver. Then we want to come over here and select the three collected variables, clone them and bring them over. Now all you need to do is hook up all of the oranges together. It kind of doesn't matter what order they're hooked in, just make sure that all oranges are hooked together, one after another. Now you're going to want to flip every single one of these. So if it says false, turn it to true. If it says true, turn it to false. Then you want to come back to your big wall of circuits and you want to connect each set position chip to its corresponding second bool variable. So when you get to this point, make sure you save the room. So now let's try to explain what is happening here. So when the room resets, it is going to automatically make all of the turn off bool variables to true. It's going to make all of the collected variables to false. All right, so now for each one of these rows, the collected is false, and then the other bool variable down here is set to true. Since both of them are not true, the AND becomes false, which then means whenever this is going through, constantly checking, it's not gonna fire off on any of these because the AND isn't true. Unless we touch one of those collectibles. When we do, the signal will come out of the player entered, going to flip its collected variable to true. This is then, for just a moment, gonna have both of these equaling true, in which case the AND equals true, in which case the if then fires off, which then resets the position of the collectible way down below the map so you can't get to it. And then after doing that, it's going to immediately turn the turn off bool to false, meaning this will be false again and this one will not fire, and it can go on to seeing if any of the other collectibles have been collected. Collectible 1, boop, teleport. Collectible 2, boop, teleport. Collectible 3, boop, teleport. And now we've collected them all. But how are we going to escape? We need the door to open. Let's make a door that knows when you've collected all of them. So let's start off with a good old button. Then we're going to get an if chip. Go ahead and connect the pressed to the if chip. Now we're going to get another and chip. Then we're going to go over here and we're going to select and clone all three of the collected bool variables, not the turn off, the collected. Now let's go ahead and hook up the and chip to the if chip. Okay, and then we're going to hook up each one of these bools to an input on the AND chip. Now here we are missing an input. All we need to do is configure the chip and click add input. This will add a third input for us. So I'm not good with a maker pen, like other than chips, so I'm gonna make a very basic door. Don't make fun of it. Now we're going to get a piston, and we're going to connect the door to the gold rod on the piston. So we're just going to hook up the then to the play on the piston. All right, so now you can see clearly I have not collected the collectibles anymore. And if I hit the button, the door does not open. But if we collect everything, now the door is ready to be opened. So as I was making this, and if you guys tested this out with me, I'm sure you've noticed you have to go and retrieve your items every single time if you want to reset the room. We're going to make a system that resets it for you. So let's go over to these circuits that we did earlier, and we kind of need to determine what triggers this. For us, I'm just going to use a button, but you can imagine that button acting like the game is over, everybody's been killed, or everything's been collected, everybody's escaped. Now we're going to borrow all 6 of these bool variables and clone them over to this new system. We're going to go ahead and hook up the pressed output to the first input on the first bool variable, and just like over there, it's going to run through and reset each one. So when the game resets, we don't just want all of the bool variables to go back, we want all of the collectibles to go back to their original positions. So for that, we're going to need 3 set position chips. So this is going to be kind of difficult to see. We want the target for this one to be the first trigger volume board over here. So we are going to hook up this top yellow to the target on this set position. And then for the second trigger volume, we'll do the same thing. We'll go get that top yellow and we'll hook it up here to target. Third one, top yellow, hook it up to target. Now for each one of these positions, we're going to have to make a system that when the room starts, it records the position that the collectible is in. So then when we reset, it can go back to that position. For that, we are going to piggyback on these circuits that we made earlier from resetting the room. We're going to need 3 get position chips and 3 vector variable chips. All the vector variables need different names. They can just have a number difference between them as long as they're all different, and they're all synced. So when the room is reset or loaded, it's going to set all of our bool variables, and then when we come down here, we just want to continue the chain. So we're going to connect that to this vector variable, going to connect that to vector variable 2 and connect that to vector variable 3. Then we're going to connect each one to its own get position chip. So just as we did last time, you're going to connect it to that top yellow connection. We're going to use this one for the first collectible over there, which would be the top board. We're going to use this for the second one, which is the second board, and this for the third one, which is the third board. Okay, once you have all of these set up, you're going to go back to these room reset circuits, and we're going to hook up the vector variables over there to its corresponding set position. So if this is the first one, we want this position to be that first vector variable, and then this is the second one, so we want it to go to the second vector variable, and then this is the third one, so we want it to go on the third vector variable. So let's go ahead and save and try this reset system out. And now, just like last time, we can collect 1, collect 2, collect 3, whoops, and then the door will open. Oh, the game's over. We all escaped. Let's reset everything. So now they're all back in their position. Oh, we forgot to do the door. All you're going to need is a piston set distance. You're going to connect the orange to continue the chain, keep that value at 0, and then you're going to hook up this target to the very top yellow connector on the piston. Alright, next up is the notification system. So when the player collects, they know, hey, you have 1 out of 3 collectibles, or hey, the door is open. So because it uses the 3 collected variables here, and we've already got it set up in this pattern, I'm going to move these circuits over a little bit to borrow those pools so we don't have to copy more. So we'll start off here with the event definition, and we are just going to configure it and name it notify. We'll go ahead and get an event receiver and bring it over here. We know we're going to need it later. And let's configure that event receiver to trigger for the notify. Now we got to go back to our original big circuits. So when do we want these notifications to go off? We want these notifications to go off once you have collected an item. So we're going to get an event sender, and we're going to configure it to send the notify event. We're also going to leave it as all. Then we are going to hook up each one of these turn off rules to the event sender. Now let's go back to our new circuits. So now back over here at the circuits, we want to go ahead and get an if chip and hook it up to the event receiver. So what do we want to happen when this notification event comes through? We want the player to receive a notification. So there's 2 chips that we can use for this. There's the show notification or the show local subtitle. We're going to use the show local subtitle. One for if they collect everything, and one for when they've only collected some of it. Go ahead and wire your then to the top one and your else to the bottom one. So when they do have all the collectibles, meaning that this input is true, then we want it to show the subtitle of door is open. Now this one down here is a bit more complicated because we want it to count the number of collectibles that we have already collected. So for that, we're going to go ahead and get an equals chip, hook up the bool variable to the if. We are going to need a list create, and we're going to connect each one of these bool variables. So we're going to hook all of these up to the list create. And just like the and chip, if you configure this list create, you go to chip settings and add an input, you can make the list longer. Now we're going to use a list get all indices of. We're going to connect the resulting list to the target input here, and we're going to flip this to true. So this is going to give me the index of every single one of these bool variables when it becomes true. So this chip will tell me if any of these are true, what position in the list is it. We really don't need that information. What we need is the number of results that come out here. So for that, we're going to use a list get count. Then we're going to hook up the result here to the list get count. This will show me how many have been collected. So if this number, how many have been collected, if that number equals 3, then this will be true, and then you'll see the door is open notification. If it is not equal to 3, then it's going to show this notification. And to start this off, we need a to string. Let's just hook that up there. Next, we're going to use a string format chip. So we're actually going to hook up the result from this to string to the value, the second one here. And then we're going to hook up the result from the string format to the string input, the subtitle on the show local subtitle. Now we need to determine what this top string says, what the format's going to be. So for this, you're going to have to type in a very specific thing if you don't know how formats work. If I type in open squiggle bracket, 0, close squiggle bracket. So if you type that in, whatever number comes into this first input is going to be what is output. We can go more into string formatting if you want me to, but for now, whenever you use the squiggle 0 squiggle, it's going to put out whatever you put in right here, but we can add on to that. So I'm going to figure that again. So now let's say that I collect 1, 1 does not equal 3, therefore the else will go. And since the else will go, it's going to spit out this message of whatever this input is /3 collected. And since at that point we will have only collected 1, this number will be 1, and so it will say 1/3 collected. All right, so we are over here. We're going to hit horror game lore number 1, 1 of 3 collected. Horror game lore number 2, drift, 2 of 3 collected. Horror game number 3, or whatever, the door is open. We've collected all 3. Now we go over, where's the button at? What do I do with the button? Oh, it's over here. Now we go over to the button, the door will open. And then if we want to do it all over again, we go over to our game reset. Boom. Everything's been reset to its position. All the variables are reset where they need to be. And you can continue on with what I can only assume will be a monster. If you want to make your own monster in Rec Room, click this video here. Use code RCL1 in Rec Room. RCLman out. And the drift has caught me again. The drift.